On this episode of the InsurTech Geek podcast, we're talking about the unethical practices threatening insurance claims with Matthew Monson from the Monson Law Firm. The InsurTech Geek podcast is all about technology that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. We'll be interviewing guests and doing deep dives into specific tech we see changing the industry. We're taking you on a journey through insurance tech, so enjoy the ride and geek out. Terra, this week's episode sponsor, is revolutionizing the world of workers' compensation claims and policy management. Terra's cutting-edge platform empowers insurers with comprehensive benchmarking tools, robust management systems, and an integrated ancillary services marketplace. Discover how Terra is driving innovation and efficiency in workers' comp at terra.insure. That's terra.insure. And we are back with another great episode of the InsurTech Geek podcast. Today I'm flying solo with my guest from my home state of Louisiana. He's from the North Shore. That's north of Lake Pontchartrain, for those of you who don't know what that means. And his name is Matthew Monson. Matthew, how's it going today down in beautiful New Orleans, Louisiana, /Mandeville/Covington?
No, it's a wonderful day today. Thank you for having us.
Glad you're on, and I'm glad to be talking about you've got some good stories. You and I met up recently, and we actually saw each other last week in Orlando at the at NAMIC, whichever way you want to say it, potato, hanging out with all the mutual insurance companies. But before we talk about what Monson Law Firm does and about our topic du jour, I'd love to talk about you. Looks like you might have been born and raised in the South. Are you from Mandeville? Are you from New Orleans? Where are you from?
So I'm actually from was born in Violet, Louisiana, which is I'd say down the road or down the road from New Orleans itself. Kind of born and raised on the South Shore in New Orleans. Grew up over there. Ended up going to college in Washington D.C. Then I experienced 0-degree temperatures for the first time in my life. I said, this is way too cold. I am coming back home to law school. So I went to Tulane for law school. Practiced at some of the normal insurance defense, I guess what they call sweatshops, for a number of years. And I said, hey, look, I think we can do a better job of that. And so about 14 years ago, I started our firm and started out with just me. Then we expanded from Louisiana into Texas and to 2 offices in Florida. And now we have about 20 lawyers kind of doing our thing in the insurance defense world. That's
great. How did you end up on North Shore?
Family, really. When we had our first child, who's now 23, we wanted a nice, safe place to raise a kid. And New Orleans, while it's really, really fun and it's a great place to hang out. Anybody who wants to go visit and have fun and come spend your money down here, please. But as far as the best place to raise a kid, the nice little safe environment over here in Mandeville, North Shore, was the place to be for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my uncle and cousins. I had some uncle and cousins up there on North Shore, and of course a bunch more down in Uptown and downtown CBD, the whole area there in New Orleans. So always fascinated how people wind up where they end up. I had a similar experience. I did an internship in Boston when I was in college, and experienced 55-degree temps in July, and I was like, no.
And Boston's a great town.
It's a great town. Had a lot of fun, but 5 to 6 months to 7 months of that, I wasn't about it. Couldn't do it. So I came on back to the South, and certainly I go to New Orleans a lot. So you go to Tulane, you get your JD in law there, and you started out doing defense work. So like, what was the lead into doing insurance defense work? Like, how did you wind up in that? I doubt that was the specialty you isolated when you were in law school.
Certainly not. Well, of course, the legal market wasn't so great. And my father was a surplus lines insurance broker. So I grew up in the insurance business. As a matter of fact, in 1982, he started his insurance brokerage literally out of the front room of the house. Eventually expanded into 2 rooms. We had people showing up at our house every day. When we talk about, insurance technology, we go all the way back to pre-fax machines. So the communications that he would have with London was via a telex machine, which when I mention that to most people in the industry now, they have no idea what it is. It literally is a ticker tape machine, Western Union, think of like old school ways. So when London would communicate with my father, it would be at 3:00 in the morning, our time. be 9 o'clock in the morning their time, and the whole closet would shake right below my room. So I'd hear this thing, just punching and hitting and whatnot. And so I grew up in the business. I grew up with my father seeing the first advertising plaintiff attorneys on the 10 o'clock news. I grew up with him crank calling them at 10 o'clock at night and screaming to them, "You're a disgrace to your profession." And that was just for the first couple of things. But I also grew up with him seeing some of the apartment complexes would catch on fire, and they would mention it, again, 10 o'clock news. And he would go, "Oh no, I know I quoted that." And so he would get up in his PJs, walk over to the front room of the house and go through his files, knowing that he had quoted that thing every year and seeing if he was on it and if that was going to, have a claim that was affected. So I really kind of grew up in there. And so having worked at an insurance agency during college and worked for my dad, over time, that was on the resume. So certainly that is something that I guess attracted the insurance defense firms to me.
That's awesome. Yeah. My dad was in the Teflon and plastics business. I did not end up working in the plastics business, but it certainly definitely made me want to be an entrepreneur, run a business, growing up with him. And then all my aunts, uncles, and cousins in New Orleans all were business people, all of them.
Yep. Well, I think I was 7 years old, and I went to the office with my dad because they were replacing the carpet in our house, and I went there literally in my white First Communion suit to the office and spent the whole day with them. And my grandfather had some car dealerships, so they actually asked me at that time, "Do you want to go into insurance like your dad?" And I said, "No, I want to own a car dealership like my papa," as I said. And so I always knew I wanted to be in business and would be a business owner at some point. And so it ended up being in the legal field.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love the thread. I love the thread of your father through this as well. And it's exciting. So when you started Monson Law Firm, did you start going into insurance defense work straight out of the gate? Was that the idea?
Yes. We had two clients. We had a homeowner's insurance client and a single commercial general liability client. And it was a fun adventure because I was working, as a partner at another law firm, not equity. And I thought that it was, it's time to do it. I was 38 at the time. And I said, "You know what?" Made a couple of phone calls to two people, said, "Look, I'm thinking about doing this. If I do it, would you, let the files ultimately kind of move with me?" And they said, "Sure." And so we made the leap. I like to say to other people that I was too stupid to know what I couldn't do. And so, because I was not aware of those limitations or how, challenging it would be. Because again, most people who start insurance defense law firms, it's usually, a group of four people, or five partners, each of them having their own business. We literally started in 1,200 square feet with me and my then secretary, who's still with us as our office manager, and kind of grew from there. And a lot of learning, a lot of mistakes along the way. And so now I realize why everybody just doesn't go ahead and do it, after I've been through it, but we're better off for it.
So what emerging regulatory or legal trends should insurance professionals be paying attention to this year, especially in response to increasing concerns about unethical practices and claims handling? I mean, there's a lot of noise going on around claims handling. There's litigation as well around the use of AI in claims handling. There's a lot going on out there. So what should insurance pros be paying attention to?
Well, I really think the biggest thing that I don't think the insurance industry is fully aware of or cognizant of is the tech-enabled claims instigation. Um, while insurance companies are trying to wrap their arms around and embrace the technology, AI, and some of the efficiencies that it provides, what I don't think they see as a real threat or the threat that it is, it's the tech-enabled claims instigation, meaning text message marketing or some of the insidious ways that law firms are able to obtain clients. Right. In the insurance industry, we have, or excuse me, in the legal industry, we have very specific rules that engage in lawyer advertising. We're all familiar with the billboard lawyers, right? We look at the billboard lawyers as a threat. What I can tell you is that the billboard lawyers are not anywhere near the threat that the tech-enabled claims instigation presents to the entire insurance industry, because you can't see it. You can't see where it's coming. There's actually a company called Forewarn. It's run by a gentleman by the name of Todd Kozakowski, who's done extensive research into it. So probably be a very good guest for you guys in the future. That talks about not just search engine optimization, which was fine 10 years ago, right? To talk about that and say, hey, there's the threat. But they're talking about fake websites of insurance companies in order when somebody thinks they're filing a claim with an insurance company, they're actually signing up with a lead generator. My wife, and when we talk about this a little bit later on with the law firm that I busted doing this, text message marketing in storm claims, where they can go and canvas an entire area and reach the policyholder immediately after the storm saying, hey, look, we can help you get paid, right? And as we all know from just basic numbers, right, when you have a claim that's represented by an attorney against an insurance company, that's a 4 or 5x cost as far as the value of that claim, just because it gets more expensive, and the defense cost, hiring us as a law firm, to defend those types of claims, it just goes up astronomically. And the challenge when you really look at that is that it's not baked into the rates of the insurance companies. Actuarial science is a backwards looking science that takes the data from the past and tries to extrapolate as to what's going to happen in the future. But the technological change is happening so fast, the capabilities are expanding of the plaintiff's attorneys to be able to get these cases such that it's not baked into the cake, it's not baked into the rates. And we're seeing insurance companies really struggle as a result. It's evident in California, it's evident in Florida. There's 12 insurance companies that failed largely due to the
litigation expenses.
100%.
Yeah, and they're they've applied private equity and technology to scaling plaintiffs' litigation. I've always said that efficient bureaucracy is a terrifying one. Like if you actually, the government, an inefficient government actually isn't much of a threat to many people, but an efficient one is scary. I would say the same thing when it comes to litigation. Of course, I'm a big advocate of loser pays from other countries. I think that would it'd probably dry up most of your book of business, so it might not be good.
Well, but it's fine by me because I get that, right? And so I don't feel it as a threat, and that's what makes me different than your average insurance defense attorney, right? I want what's right for the people, for the public. I grew up just like I talked about, with seeing how the ways things are supposed to be handled, and going back 40 years now. And so, and seeing the changes that are happening, all insurance companies know what to do is to raise rates in response to these rising threats. And unfortunately, we're getting to the point where the average Joe cannot afford the rates that are necessary to be charged to address the risk.
Yeah, exactly. It's just too much.
There's another company. It's called Quintessa Marketing, and they advertise. They advertise this on Facebook. They advertise it on LinkedIn, and their advertisements state only pay for signed retainers. We will go out. We will find the people. We will do the lead generation, and then we will get them to sign your contract for a retainer without anybody ever speaking to anyone from the law firm. And it's not that it's happening. Of course, this is happening all over the place, particularly in the mass tort world, in your asbestos and your Camp Lejeune and whatnot. But they're advertising it. They're not hiding what they're doing. And the regulatory agencies, when you're talking about bar associations or whatnot, are so far behind and so under-resourced that there's no way that they can keep up with this.
That is really scary. So, of course, I think the real solve is a legislative one. I think it's loser pays, because then plaintiffs' litigation doesn't scale. They're going to have to almost like have a different set of rules, similar to the rules like the AOB, the assignment of benefit rules they had in Florida, where you can't you can't assign benefit to a roofing company. I almost feel like it's like an assignment of lead rule, where like the lead can't be generated by a third party lead gen company. Like you almost have to make it so they can't scale the litigation.
Well, keep in mind, it's already unethical. It's already against the rules. But the law firms are doing it anyway, and they're being told by the lead generators that it's fine. But it's not against the rules for the lead generation company. It's not against the rules for the for the hedge
It's not against the law. It's against the rules. There's a difference, right?
Correct. Correct. But then again, there's a statute in Louisiana that was meant, when we went back into the 1980s, we're talking about literally the ambulance chasers, right? There are laws against it that make it criminal over here in Louisiana. Unfortunately, with the story that we'll talk about in a bit, our Attorney General's office did nothing when presented with that evidence.
That's tough.
It-
Yeah. So how do you see InsurTech? Now, of course, InsurTech is technology focused on the carrier and the TPA and the broker, the MGA. How do you see it transforming claims handling and coverage disputes from a legal perspective?
I think it's a necessary circumstance, right? We all have to, move on from the typewriter onto the computer, onto, the internet, and now that the AI and the technology is amazing, right? Some of the things in the speech I sat in with you, it's a very good thing. It's necessary, right? Especially when you talk about the talent drain from the people who've been around for 30 or 40 years in the industry now retiring. And so improving the speed and the capacity to handle more claims is necessary. We have to have it there, right? But it comes at a risk. And one of the questions that I raise, and maybe you're the one better to answer it than me, but while tech can allow someone to handle perhaps twice the number of claims, at some point we're going to reach kind of maximum capacity of our brains, right? If someone can normally handle 50 or 60 lawsuits, for example, on the legal side, the technology might let you handle 300 lawsuits, but do you have the mental capacity to keep up with the technology to be able to process or have your mind switch between those 300 claims and still provide the same level of customer service? And that's I think that's one of the concerns that everybody should be focused on, right? Not whether or not AI is going to take over somebody's jobs. No, we're always going to need people involved in the process, right? But are those people going to be well equipped to be able to keep up with the AI or to keep up with the technology?
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about Apex MMA. You played a really key role in bringing the Apex MMA scheme to light. Can you walk us through like what that was about? Because a lot of people don't know about this. So
Sure.
summarize it shortly, and then tell us what led you to take action and what we can all learn from how the case unfolded.
Right. So just real shortly in the elevator pitch sentence, I busted one of the biggest insurance and legal schemes in U.S. history. There's a law firm that came into Louisiana in 2020 after the 2020 hurricanes, and they signed up 15,000 people in Louisiana by their own admission for representation for hurricane claims and or lawsuits. That was more than the entire rest of the legal and complete legal industry combined. And they there were some young gunners. One of the ways I really busted it is that my wife received an unsolicited text message saying, "You qualify for Hurricane Ida claimed," and I put little dollar signs on here. Click here, right? So she clicked on there, and it took her to a website that was called disasterclaimhelp.com, and it didn't identify a law firm. It violated every one of our attorney advertising rules. You fill out some information, and you click a button, and it said, "See if I qualify," as though it's some kind of government program to get money. And then next thing you know, she's in the system. And about 3 minutes later, we received a phone call from somebody from a call center, I believe in the Philippines, that was trying to onboard her to sign her up, with a signed contract for this law firm. And so I filed the bar complaints with them. When you talk about Apex Roofing was an AOB contractor, right? Using assignments of benefits. But the challenge that Apex ran into when they came into Louisiana in 2021 and was working with MMA is that I wrote personally the first language in the country that got approved at an insurance commissioner level that allowed carriers to reject an assignment of benefits. So at that time, assignment of benefits were still legal in Louisiana, but pursuant to some of the case law, an insurance company could contract out of that. So they didn't owe the AOB. Well, then what this law firm did along with Apex is say, in order to get around that prohibition on that assignment of benefits, and it was demonstrated in one of my cases 856 times, the law firm indicated and admitted on the record that they told insurance companies that they represented the policyholders when in fact they represented Apex Roofing. And so that resulted in more bar complaints from me. Also complaints to the Department of Insurance, which fined the firm a combined $2 million. Sadly, though, because the Division of Administrative Law just ruled that those $2 million of fines were not appropriate, and that the the Department of Insurance should have gone to other enforcement agencies and law enforcement. The bigger challenge with that is that the state attorney general at the time did not take any action because that state attorney general was running for governor. That state attorney general, both from a PAC and from personal to the campaign, received $15,000 in donations from this law firm and looked the other way. And it still to this day has not taken, even the new attorney general has not taken any action. Unfortunately, that person's now our governor, and and has shown that essentially is very close with the plaintiffs community, and we're talking about a conservative MAGA type type governor.
Yeah, we had there was a similar problem back in the in Florida with legislative reform there. I believe the Speaker of the House was a plaintiff's attorney, if I recall correctly, and that was it took DeSantis had to work really hard to kind of override that and get the insurance reform, because despite homeowner premiums going through the roof, no pun intended, because of AOB and Morgan and all the other things, scaled litigation. It's interesting, as a technologist, they're very effectively using technology to scale up their litigation efforts. They're offshoring call centers. They're using CRM systems. They're using text message two-way texting capabilities. They're doing mass outreach. I mean, so they're leveraging. The plaintiffs' attorneys are leveraging the hell out of tech to enroll this many people.
No, certainly. And obviously there's a big cost there. And so when you talk about the homeowners industry in particular, right, a lot of the major insurance companies have kind of pulled off the coast over the last several decades. And so what you have is a bunch of smaller regional insurance companies who, quite frankly, are being outfinanced by the people who are looking to take their money. And that's, they estimate the litigation financing is a, $20 billion, industry, and growing. And
they're financing the solicitation of litigation, though.
Correct.
Yeah, this traditional litigation finance is where you're in the middle of a lawsuit, you hit a max where you just can't fund it anymore. You go to a litigation finance company, you present that individual case. Yes. They review the facts of the case and they decide if they want to finance your litigation or not. This is totally different.
Correct.
This is litigation finance in advance of the cases being solicited.
And I've coined a term a while ago for this. I call it litigation harvesting financing, right? Yeah. Which is different than litigation financing. And even when you look at the statutes that have been passed in multiple states that are meant to disclose, seek to have disclosure of litigation financing, when they define it, and Louisiana is one of those states, when you define litigation financing, it's defined as a loan to a particular file, just like you're describing, right, where the repayment of the loan is contingent upon a successful result in the lawsuit. Those same statutes, because they define that and say that this is what needs to be disclosed, right, actually prevents from disclosure by law the litigation harvesting disclosure. So you can't even make anybody tell you about it in the context of a lawsuit. And that's what such a problem is. And that's what goes to show that the people who came up with this model statute that they wanted to push in all 50 states, they're so far behind the times and they don't even know it. And that's therein lies the challenge. And so, so these insurance companies are under assault. And generally when we discuss about, we need litigation financing because these multi-billion-dollar insurance companies, are out there and we need to level the playing field, right? That's really not the case when you talk about these smaller regional carriers. They're not multi-billion-dollar companies, and the money that was lent to MMA, for example, the $35 million in financing that this one small little law firm received would be enough to create 3 brand new insurance companies in Louisiana.
Oh my God!
Right. And they're just a drop in the bucket. There's another law firm that just filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy that focuses on the mass torts in Houston. They only advertise 4 lawyers on their website, and they just filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which is a full liquidation that say that they owe $202 million to financiers.
Yeah, so it definitely doesn't always work out.
Correct, and so you bring up a very good point there by saying it doesn't work out because it's actually predatory lending to law firms, where the law firms borrow a ton of money. They go, here you go, and we think we're going to make a bunch of money sometime in the future. and then the proceeds, the legal fees from that, are actually subject to UCC financing statements, almost like a mortgage on their fees. And so the lenders go, they don't care. They don't care what law firm has it, because even if that law firm goes under, the lenders are still going to win when those cases ultimately get settled. And that's what's so disturbing. And that's the very large money coming, after the insurance industry. And look, there's examples of the insurance industry actually participating in litigation financing. And that's, and if you think about it, if you're a hedge fund that's investing in reinsurance, what's the best way to hedge your bet? It's to invest in the money that's coming after that. And you can win on both ways. And that's the challenge. Really an existential crisis that's not being considered in the marketplace right now.
Yeah. I mean, when you say existential crisis, it's existential to the carriers.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. You're talking about bankrupting the entire personal lines property, and potentially it's hard to do this on auto, right? This is mainly around property, isn't it?
It is, because the tech-enabled matter lends itself to that, because it's a mass group of people that you can market to, right? You can go by zip code, and you can use the same information, that's attainable from from voting rolls and things like that, and wherever else this data has been amassed, and apply that big time. And it works towards a mass torts, right? There's another law firm that's being sued by a lead generator for $13 million. They had agreed to pay this lead generator $42 million to obtain 10,000 Camp Lejeune clients. Now, I don't know how many people drank the water at Camp Lejeune, right? But for one law firm to represent or to state that they ethically represent 10,000 people when that law firm did not ever call them, did not ever reach out to them, that's a massive, massive problem. And so, but when you talk about the text message marketing, I've received tons of text messages over time because I click on them. Most of us just delete it, report it as spam, but they will go so far as to try to get workers' comp cases, your normal slip and falls, your auto accidents, right? This is going to invade all levels of claims in the insurance industry.
Wow. Well, just to kind of wrap, is the big solve? I mean, is there technology we can deploy to attack this? Or do you think like the really big solve? I mean, loser pays would solve this pretty instantly, right? So if if the person who filed a lawsuit had to pay for it, but I mean, the reality is, I don't see that happening. So do you think that they're just going to tighten up and make the rules for lawyers laws? So that we can prevent this type of thing from happening, or they just need to bring a lot of enforcement actions to say that we're actually going to enforce? Like, what's the big solve?
I think the big solve is we need to make it illegal to unethically source cases through lead generation. We need to make it illegal to finance litigation harvesting, and we should apply the ambulance chasing statutes across the board. I think the chances of this are zero, of this actually happening. And we're all going to end up paying as a result. When you look at this circumstance, if you try to take it from a more right-leaning perspective, this is just bad business, right? If you look at it from a more liberal perspective, this is the 99.9% getting screwed over with higher insurance rates, so that the 0.1%, which are the lawyers and the hedge funds, can make a lot of money.
Yeah, because they end up pulling down 33 to 50% of the settlement amount.
The attorneys, certainly for the attorneys, yes. But then what you're seeing is what they are paying. They're paying sometimes loans at rates of 20% to the lenders. So you really get in a circumstance where when there's only so many pennies in a dollar, as a friend of mine once told me, and so all those pennies are being called for, by the people who are involved in the prosecution of the claim, and again, it's not being done to truly better the individuals. This is not personal service. We're replacing, technology is replacing the personal service with the handling of the claim. If somebody has a legitimate claim, they need help. They need someone to worry about their claim and not run it through this mass machine. When MMA or McClenny Mosley and Associates, when they declared bankruptcy, they claimed a fee interest in 31,161 claims. The law firm was never bigger than 18 lawyers. Right? How does one lawyer handle several thousand claims on their own behalf? When you divide it up, it just it doesn't lend itself to personal service. And what was ended up happening is that this law firm was showing up and express the ability to settle 500 claims in a day. This is what Zach Mosley himself stated in another podcast interview that he involved with. But they would show up with insurance companies and say, hey, we want to settle 30 or 40 of these today with you. And not a single policyholder would show up to the mediation. It's just process over people. And that's what we have to guard for when we're looking at technology, right? Technology is definitely the present. Forget the future. It's the present. We need to embrace it. We need to be able to use the efficiencies that it can provide, but not at the expense of the personal service to the individuals. And so kind of going in the future, right? My biggest hope that technology focuses on the customer, right? The insurance industry needs to have better outreach to policyholders. Somebody I know mentioned that his wife was working with Morgan & Morgan. And as much as, people like to criticize them and they put themselves out there as the biggest law firm in the country, what he was describing was that the outreach to his wife at every stage of the process was incredible. Letting her know everything that was happening and everything that was going on. And it was with text messages, and it is with, that constant communication. And it's something that the insurance industry, I think, needs to be doing better. They need to educate the policyholders as to the process. We need to inform them, every step of the way so that the policyholder fully and timely understands what's happening with their claim so that they don't get confused by what most people would interpret to be a very complex process and go to somebody to help them communicate with the insurance company when a lot of times they could do that on their own.
Okay. Well, great conversation. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the battle you're fighting on behalf of the insurance industry. And thanks for bringing this to light for everybody. It's really, really, really important to know what's going on.
No, thank you, James. Thank you for having us. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, and thank you to all our listeners for tuning in today to geek out our interview with Matthew Monson from the Monson Law Firm. Talk to you next time on the InsurTech Geek Podcast. The InsurTech Geek Podcast is all about technology that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. I've been your host, James Benham, that's jamesbenham.com, with co-host Rob Galbraith at endofinsurance.com. We're taking you on a journey through insurance tech, so enjoy the ride and geek out.